It is a big idea, a new world order.
Your world is not what it seems. Ansary, outside the box.
Coming to you live April 2nd, 2009. I'm your host, Ansary. And it's interesting that we're coming to you one day live after April Fool's Day because, that was the day also they started up the G20. They're talking about the New World Order and the New World Order currency, yada, yada, yada. So we've been talking about this for some time. A lot of the stuff is coming up to a head now in London, where there are protesters battling with police in the streets, and there's a lot going down literally in the heart of London's financial district. Tonight we'll be showing you footage from the G20 protest. It is very ironic that it kicked off on April Fool's Day, because the joke definitely is on the people of the world that believe that these bailouts are actually here to help the people instead of actually the bankers that have bought up the politicians to allow these bailouts to actually go on. So let's start, before we get to our guest, George Green, in a couple minutes, with a couple updates on the G20. In a press conference after the opening session, the British Prime Minister Gordon Brown, who's constantly calling for a new world order to fix these problems the bankers and the military-industrial complex have manufactured, he read a statement coming from the leaders of the G20, where the heads of the states have agreed to make 6 pledges to improve the world economy and emerge a new world order, in quote. Brown says that the world leaders have pledged to take global actions together and that a consensus has been reached. He says the global crisis requires a global solution. Same thing is said about global warming, or what they say causes global warming or climate change. $1 trillion is going to be pumped into the IMF to boost the world economy, and they actually say it's going to be as high as $5 trillion by 2010. We see George Soros saying if the G20 fails, global depression ahead. These are fear-mongering tactics to get you to go along with the programming, with the system. Now, CNN is saying that this crisis is actually leading us to a new world order. Now, Christy, go ahead and play some of the footage from London. Also, Russia and China are coordinating proposals on a new global currency that could replace the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency to prevent a repeat of the global economic crisis. So, these images that you're seeing of people protesting, you're going to start seeing more and more of those around the globe as things get worse economically. Here's the new numbers that came in pertain to the job losses in the United States. U.S. private sector axis, 742,000 jobs in March. Job losses in the U.S. private sector accelerated in March, more than economists had expected, which makes me wonder if we're going to see 1 million or, even more than that come April or May or June. So it's definitely building up to this point. We're going to be showing you a lot of footage tonight, and I want you to look at the screen here. And we have footage of police attacking peaceful protesters. This is known as the climate camp, up and attacking peaceful protesters, as you see in this video. But we also see other videos where people are right up in the cop's face, got blood dripping down, screaming profanities, kicking police, and the police are doing nothing. We also see other videos where they're literally smashing into the Royal Bank of Scotland, lighting fireworks, this, that, and the other thing. Highly suspicious behavior because, again, the police are doing nothing. People are standing by taking pictures. But the bulk of the people aren't involved in anything violent, so this is, in a way, a repeat of what we saw in 1999 in Seattle, Washington. Let's get a little bit of audio there and listen in. We see time and time again evidence of agent provocateurs at some of these protests. people dressed up like protesters when in reality they're agents in disguise. We saw this in Canada last year. We've seen this in Seattle, Washington. We've seen this in many other cities. We're not at the point where we're seeing protests like this yet in the United States, but at some point it is coming. So things are definitely building up. Food stamp list has swelled to a record 32.2 million in the United States, 1 in every 10 Americans. Also, they're doing damage control on Fox News. Glenn Beck is talking about some of these issues, but they're not giving you the full story. They're just announcing that there's martial law plans in America for when the economy goes, and civil unrest increases and expands throughout our own country. They're making plans for this, but they're not telling you the full story about all the FEMA camps that are out there that might be used in the future to house people, imprison people, protesting against the government. And all this footage is from yesterday, April Fool's Day, April 1st, 2009. In fact, recently Sean Hannity admits that conspiracy nut jobs were right about globalist plan for a new world order, as we've been saying for years. All right, that's enough footage for now. We're going to go ahead and play a little bit more later on in the broadcast. We're going to get ready for our guest tonight, George Green. We're glad to have him with us from his home in Idaho to give us perspective on the new world order and what's taking place and what we need to expect in the future, and also how we should be preparing. George Soros, you can visit his website, nomorehoaxes.com. He's written a number of books, published them, The Handbook for the New Paradigm, a very inspirational series on the nature of reality and what's going on in this third-dimensional realm that we all are coexisting in, this matrix. He's also a former investment banker, real estate developer, and has been involved in a number of other projects as well. George, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Certainly
Appreciate
a
you bringing
lot
me
of.
on tonight.
We're glad to have you on. Certainly a lot of stuff building up, sir. What's your take on the world at large and how quickly things are moving?
What it's really making me be is in the observer mode to keep watch on how fast they're basically programming everybody here in the United States and the rest of the world to what they want to get done. And of course, like you said today, they've announced that this is the new world order. Well, Bush has announced that. They've been doing that for a long time. But at this minute, what they're doing now is loaning more money throughout the world. In the problem that they have, the International Monetary Fund, and I happen to have their accounting book, in their International Monetary Fund book itself, the first thing that I want to know what they're talking about, and that is the definition of money, because we have to have some kind of guidelines to go on. Well, they don't have one. They flat out cannot tell you what money's like. And so when they come back today and tell you they've made special arrangements with our banks over here to mark to the market, they're just creating artificial figures out of thin air, and that's what I've been warning about a long time. And that was in the derivative market, that is running on the credit card scams across the United States right now, and the rest of the, if you want to call it the pure Ponzi game, which is the stock market, which has no bearing on business whatsoever. That's merely people gambling out here. And most people are gambling with their retirement funds, and that's the reason why they've gone down 40 to 60% in the last few months.
I think it's real important, George, that people understand that these measures of, like the Fed buying up $1 trillion of debt from the Treasury, these are desperate moves and scrambles. And there's a looting going on, but it's also a desperate move showing that, this stuff, in this these numbers, you just can't keep doing it forever. There's going to be a point where they just can't do it anymore, and we have hyperinflation. So real briefly, Bill, if we can show those slides of kind of like what we're looking at here. First of all, picture $100. And we have a graphic here of basically what $100 looks like. And a lot of people are out of touch with actually how much a trillion is. Well, we'll show you in just a sec. Now we've got $10,000 after that. A nice little bundle of money. Have a great time in Vegas. It's worth a little bit. Some decadent fun there. Now you got about $100 million after that, just to get you to visualize and see how much this is. Here's $100 million. Now we're going to look at $1 billion. Let's be with the boy. That's $1 billion. So when you hear about trillions, well, we're looking at this. Those pallets are double stacked. George, your comments. I mean, big numbers being thrown out here. I think most people just can't comprehend $1 trillion anymore and what that means.
No, and you really can't, because they're really not identifiable. I mean, $1 billion is 10,000 $100,000 homes. So we get an idea how much that is. The trouble is it's all created artificial, that they're using something we call money or dollars, as you mentioned, in order to keep track of the exchange of goods and services. And right now, nobody knows what anything is worth. Everybody is very insecure at this minute. They're no longer spending, and that's what economy is all about. And if you really look at the whole world situation, all of the area throughout the whole world, or the consumer people, are just basically collapsing around every place. Everybody they're laying off, even in India and in China. China just laid off, they closed down 14 of their refineries. Now you have to understand, China's, in population basis, is over 4 times the population of the United States. And yet they're a consumer society, and they're consuming all the goods in the world that they can finally get based on the dollar that we've given them. So we may owe them $1.2 trillion when you're using your numbers. That's the American taxpayer that has to do it, but the American taxpayer is gone. We no longer have a tax base because we don't have people working. And just like the figures that you mentioned a little while ago, the figures of the unemployment are only those people that are working, that are not working, but are drawing unemployment benefits. After the benefits are used up, they're no longer on the rolls.
Exactly.
So we're really looking.
They say Oregon's like 10.8 unemployment now, but it's probably more like 15 to 20. They're only counting people still on paper as seeking a job or something along those lines. There's a lot of people lose jobs that never go to the unemployment office.
That's exactly correct. And then they also talk to you about the inflation rate, which I figure it's around 14 or 15% too. So when they tell you to go put your money in the bank or treasuries that are yielding 2 or 3%, you're really going in the whole 18%, because you have to be buying goods at a higher price. You just go down to any supermarket and look at the Cheerio boxes, for instance. They're 20% less in size right now, but the price hasn't gone down.
Exactly. It's all getting smaller. Even the hamburger helper little boxes a lot of people buy, they've gone down about, I would say, 30% in size. I was looking at it walking down the aisle, and everything's gotten smaller. It's the same price, but the ounces, it's reduced by about 30-40% in some cases.
Well, and that's what what you're trying to do, as the rest of us, is trying to get people to start looking at things. But most people are asleep. They don't realize what's happening to them. It's the old story, taking the frog and put it in a cold jar and then heating up the jar. The frog will stay in there until it starts boiling, and then by that time they're dead. Well, we know the Global 2000 agenda right now is to get a war started. I mean, I said it's called the Plan 2000.
Uh-huh.
And the number one problem, as Kissinger says, is we have too many people on the planet. And most people will recognize that there's like 6.8 billion, increasing over 200,000 a day. And there's not enough resources in the world to take care of it. Forget the carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide malarkey. That has nothing to do with it. Our plants absorb carbon dioxide. They want it so they can get out oxygen. It's all the other pollutants and radiation that we're putting in the air that's causing all the problems with the earth. Weather changes, the commotions are doing with ELF, and everything is affecting all of the planet. We're doing it to ourselves at this minute. We're also reaching a point in the universe we're going to have major changes, and this is more earthquakes and more volcanoes, like the one that just went off in Alaska. This is going to be escalating over the next 24 or 36 months, so they're going to be going everywhere, so everybody's going to be in chaos. And the only thing they're going to do is go to their local leader, if they can find it, and then they're going to have to register, because there's going to be some kind of emergency Obama's going to have to do. And then you'll go to your post office and register, and under the FEMA rules, or Federal Emergency Management Agency, you'll basically be taken to one of those prisoner of war camps. As you're talking about FEMA camp, they asked me to actually build one, and it says enemy prisoner of war camp. That's what the contract said. I don't know who the enemy is, Alex.
I want to mention briefly some of the stuff that we're seeing on Fox. You know, I mentioned Glenn Beck, but then there's Hannity, and we all know about his experience as a propaganda minister for the government. Well, in a very recent Fox segment, former Clintonite Dick Morris tells Sean Hannity that the globalists will put the American economy under international regulation, and those people who have been yelling, oh, the UN is going to take over, they've been crazy, but now they're right. Those conspiracy people, Sean Hannity interjects, and I really should have brought this video, had suggested that for years, those conspiracy people, you're not wrong, he concludes. And Dick continued on, it's the international regulation of financial institutions we have to worry about. It will happen under IMF control. Remember, the IMF is run by the Europeans and backed by the Americans. So, George, we all agree with that statement to a certain degree, but what is your take on why Fox is trying to paint itself as a provider of information about the New World Order?
Well, you've got to put some information or put the truth out there in certain places so people will go to what they want to. It's like CNN for a long time was giving out good information. The networks are all closing down. You're aware of that. ABC, CBS, and NBC are on.
They're discussing bailout packages for the media right now, which would really hurt free speech, yeah.
Well, they're going to take away the free speech rate. There are certain bills that they're trying to get at all the talk radio programs, i.e. ones that give alternative views, like yourself, getting rid of the free speech amendment and basically have it organized. Now, the New World Order, as you and I both know, is a socialist dictatorship, which is going to be controlled by others outside of it. Now we're talking about, and they're telling everybody about the IMF, and believe it or not, just call the United Nations and ask them for the accounting book. It's called Systems of National Accounting. And it's the accounting book for the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And you'll see exactly how they got control. How does most people even aware that the Federal Reserve, and I'm finding this even at the local banks, haven't got a clue that it's it's a corporation controlled by other people, and the monopoly game, they control the money, it's all in the inner circle right now, and we're getting ready to collapse the whole United States, period, economically, so we can begin a war. We got to have what I call a diversion of all these things. The money is one thing. People are running in the streets is another. But if we can get everybody against some kind of a war going, so I watch the Middle East, because that's their biblical prophecy. They got to get a war started in Israel or thereabouts, so all of the rest of the people can follow in line, and that'll begin World War III as part of their population reduction. Out of that, you'll end up with the one world order, one world bank, and one, they're going to be saved. That's what they're looking for.
In other words,
everybody's trying to get.
You're seeing a staged war.
Or get secured. IGA. We'll give you an insurance policy. I'll give you an insurance policy on your health. Nobody wants to take responsibility for anything, Alex.
So you're looking at a staged war as well. It's going to usher in this new world order, correct, involving China, Russia, and the United States, and perhaps other countries?
Exactly. This is all beginning. What do you think China did today? China just got you saying that they're going to issue a new exchange fund over there because they want to get paid in their currency,
right.
And they don't want the dollar anymore either. So, but
right.
They're willing to work out a three-car party or a three-way party on this thing. I have some friends here in the United States that import from China, like most people do, but now they have to pay them in anything besides the dollar. So they either have to buy the Canadian dollars and try to get. An American cannot go to Canada to open up a bank account now. Did you know that?
I have.
Just to give you an idea.
It's insane.
And in Panama right now, which is another location where a lot of people have gone money down there, my friends, they're in a banking deal now. Homeland Security isn't going over every account right now. You can't wire $5,000 back to the United States because they'll sit down and say, where did you get it from? Prove it, and you're going to be a terrorist or a druggie. So you're just basically locking your money up in some of the foreign accounts.
Yeah.
Right now, the best thing you can do is get gold and silver and get physical possession. Don't buy anything on the market that's manipulated because the whole stock market's manipulated.
I want to bring up something briefly about North Korea, and I'm sure you're very aware, and I want to get your take on it. Here's some new information, folks, that you may not be aware of. North Korea is warning Japan against targeting their rocket that they're about to launch between the 4th and 8th of April. In other words, 48 hours from now, all the way up until the 8th of April this year, 2009, and the North Koreans plan to launch what they call a harmless satellite. But the Japanese, the United States, and even the Chinese and the Russians are all very concerned about what they call a militarized missile or a rocket they're going to shoot over the country of Japan. Japan says that they have mobilized their missile defense system in response to the planned North Korean launch. They are going to shoot it out of the sky if it comes near Japan. The Japanese aerospace, the United States naval ships capable of shooting down ballistic missiles have also been moved to the Sea of Japan. Well, what's interesting about this is that North Korea is saying that they will view that and the shooting down of their rocket as an act of war. North Korea is allied with the Chinese, and they have 1 million troops ready to go. North Korea depends on 90% of their food and other resources coming from China, and China is also heavily invested in the North Korean economy, using North Korea as a buffer zone against South Korea. So, very interesting. Your take?
Well, first of all, North Korea, as we know, has 5 nuclear warheads right now. This is just get everybody all wound up. The chairman of China told our leaders over here, you don't know how many nuclear bombs we have. Today they're talking about 2,000 and 1,000 that the Russians have. Russians have 20,000 nuclear warheads. We have about 10,000. I mean, you can look it up on the internet. It is there. So when they talk about these small figures, that is their goal that they were going to have that was set up by the last treaty that they had. But then when we started attacking Iraq, and Iraq was all their nuclear stuff was all being Russian. Iran is all Russian right now with their nuclear stuff, and the Russians have pulled all their nuclear scientists out of southern Iran right now because they have all the nuclear reactors and things there, because they can see what's coming up, getting a nuclear war started. Syria has the nuclear bombs. They're all over the place. And who's their enemy right now is Israel, which is basically an interesting situation because they want to follow the biblical prophecies to get this thing going. And Israel, I'm telling anybody, if you see a nuclear bomb hit Israel in the next few months, and I think it could happen, that's going to begin World War III. Because by the nature of everything, if we hit Israel, that's automatically a declaration of war against the United States, and we'll respond in kind. Is that what they're going after Iran, which in turn brings in Russia, and Russia has nuclear submarines on both coasts of the United States and floating platforms, or they call them cosmospheres, over the United States, prepared for all this thing, for the population reduction program, which they've already put up a monument for it, Alex. This is down in Georgia. It's called the Georgia Guidestones. They're only expecting 20 million Americans to be left alive on this debacle. Now, as you're watching the money play, that's just to get everybody confused. They don't really care. They got the New World Cash Card. They got the chips ready. I do have some good news for people. If you don't want to have their satellites or anything else look in your house, go out and buy some lead paint and paint it on the walls on the inside. And you can get lead paint. They use it on the bottom of boats. And it's not poisonous. Forget the malarkey they told us before. But you can't, the radiation and everything else will be protected by the lead paint. Think about that.
All right, George, I want to ask you something else about all this stuff. Now, we're talking about the New World Order, and you mentioned Iran. Ahmadinejad has mentioned that we need a New World Order as well. I wonder why. Are they jockeying for position of those that could benefit from the new emerging order that's building up more steam in the East, or are they all just working together saying the same thing, New World Order, New World Order, New World Order, New World Order? Your take on why Iran says New World Order, like three articles I found calling for it.
Well, here's the problem. If I travel around the world, and if you can get your stuff in an airplane and fly over to Iran right now and go into the supermarkets, they're just like ours. They're loaded with product, even the Cheerios and the rest of the stuff that you have. So that the play that we're being given that these are bad guys up there doing it, they really don't care. When they recognize, because they were taking oil out of the ground and they're running that critical area, there's not enough oil, they want to have energy. So what they have done is set up in a process to reprocess. This is what they want to do, reprocess the nuclear waste. The United States doesn't do that. France does, Russia does, and Iran wants to do that. That was the basis of their reactors that the Russians already put in there. So what we're looking at, they know that they're going to be siding with Russia, and rest assured, it's the old Communist Manifesto, which says, feign weakness as we go strong. Mm-hmm. And rest assured, they're there. The Russian space program is a lot higher than or farther ahead than ours. I know their nuclear program's about 10 years ahead of us. They have more billionaires in Moscow than any other city in the world. And that's based with, the information from Forbes magazine. So the money games and everything else that's playing on, what the propaganda they get down here, just look at things and don't believe it or research everything yourself. The bad thing that they have going right now, the Internet, can give you all kinds of information and you can sort it through, get with other people to support each other, get your own food stored up right now. I'm recommending that pretty heavily. Water, if you can, get away from major cities, because things are going to be really drastically going in the next few months.
All right, I want to get you to elaborate on that. We're briefly going to show, Christy, let's actually do track 2 instead. We're seeing more protests around the world, and looking back the last couple of years, we see a lot of weird situations happen where we see protests turn violent, where we see a small segment start up the violence, and it looks like this is a ploy by the part of intelligence agencies working in cohorts with the police in some cases to plant agent provocateurs to start something violent so they can crack down on all the peaceful protesters and make it look like it's necessary. So we're going to show you track 2 from this particular DVD, and all this is from yesterday. And then we'll come back and talk more to George. But you're going to see what I'm talking about here in this video. Go ahead and roll it, and I'm going to kind of narrate over it. If this is track 2, then perhaps I'm at track 5. Try track 5. That was it. That's it. Right there. Okay, I want you guys to look at the guy in the middle of the screen.
I'm still here, if you can hear me.
Yeah, we're just watching this at the very meeting point between one line of police and the protesters. There was a great surge from the back, but this seems to be the ringleader at the moment. Very
See
keen
how
to
none of the
get
cops
to
even
front.
touch the guy. They don't even touch him. He's right in their face. He's kicking. He's screaming. And you see this guy. Oh, here comes the guy with the stick. He emerges. There's something very suspicious about some of the stuff we're seeing at protests. And then after things like this, you end up seeing people get their ass beat.
The line that they're trying to create is being threatened in any way.
There's another protester has emerged with a very long pole of some description. There goes a smoke bomb.
Now look here. He grabs him. He grabs him. And he easily gets away, though, and slips back into the crowd right after this. Like a ninja. Yeah, he was just quick. Yeah.
Police officer
and they're just standing there.
A police officer has just been struck very forcibly by that protester. He's more than a protester with that long pole, and we can see the officer being taken aside.
A cop gets assaulted, but the guy gets away. But they end up going after the girls and the ladies, and you see plenty of them getting hit upside the head with a shield. So, George, it seems like they just want an angry population. We've got violence all over the TV set. We've got World Wrestling. We've got all this stuff. But do you think people are actually intelligently prepared to create real change, or do you think they're just trying to whip up an angry mob so they can have the pretext to just drop the baton on the head?
Well, the problem is that those things that you're showing right now are happening all over the globe. And you can go isolated to one of them saying that's only happening there, but they don't tell you about the stuff that's happening all over the continent of Africa. They're happening even in Australia in the cities, Latin America, that go to Venezuela, all these different places of all kinds of riots that are not only just happening against the current regimes that are involved into it, but people are starving to death all over the world, and they're starting to get ready to get organized, and that's the reason why they got to get this war started again.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think it's all agent provocateur use, by the way. I just think there might be some elements there going on in some of these protests. But certainly we're looking at a lot more on the table coming up, as you said, by this summer. And so we're going to see more rioting. So what do you think is going to be transpiring in the next couple months? I know a lot of people are talking about the next couple months being highly significant in ways that most people have no comprehension.
Well, I happen to have one of my friends as a state representative, and he said within 6 months you will not recognize the dollar. That's telling me that what they're doing right now, because the rest of the world's not going along with just borrowing debt or creating things and laying off, people are being laid off all around the planet, Alex. So it isn't a question of just the United States. We just happen to be a focal point because we've exported all our jobs. Even IBM is just telling people they're laying off 5,000 more people and going off to India, to acquire them. So we can no longer keep the system going that we have, and that's another one of the reasons why we're going to be looking at all this total chaos. And what can I tell you? Go to my website, nohoax.com, and read the special message for you. And if that happens to, register with you, then you'll get more information from our website. And that's nohoax.com, Nohoax.
Let's get into, in a couple minutes, what the new the handbook for the new paradigm is. And for those listening, that's another subject about the spiritual component of man that most people have been removed from, and how that's a part of the, one of the big problems that we're facing on a global level is our disconnection with who we are. But before we get into that, so lay this down for us, George, because you're talking to us, we the people here in Portland, Oregon. How do you view our own region here, things we need to look at, and then we'll also get into the defenses of the nation breaking down, but how do you view Portland?
Well, Portland is an inland port. All the ports on the West Coast are targets to be taken out of. If you look up on, there is some documents, I don't have it on my website, but there was a Russian nuclear missile that was aboard a Chinese ship that was sunk about 4 weeks ago. Are you aware of that off the coast out there?
Yes, I believe
there was that. Another
this month, a couple.
deal.
You have that, and then you have the issue with the United States shooting out, I believe, a Russian satellite, and then you also had the Chinese, the United States having a skirmish in the South China Sea. We're sending out all these naval vessels that they say are unarmed, but in reality there are many that are armed, watching the Chinese build up, and Russia's building their aircraft carriers now. So they are definitely moving further and further away from China's mainland, going more out in the ocean than we're already out in the ocean. So our navies are intersecting more.
Well, that's true, but I just told you there was a Chinese ship 30 miles offshore, just right between Portland and Seattle out there, that the Russians sunk the ship because aboard it was a stolen Russian nuclear bomb, and they were going to set it off over here.
I have no knowledge of that story. I've never even heard that one yet. No, I'm going to have to check out that particular one.
Okay, you can go to whatdoesitmean.com and you can get all the details and all the people that were aboard and how many got killed.
Okay, so that's Portland.
This has all happened. That's why we're speaking almost. It's getting a little close, and that's the reason why I'm looking. My secondary home is going to Latin America. Anything south of the equator will be relatively safe because that's not the goal. There's not enough people down there to make any difference to them right now. It's the northern hemisphere that's going to get rock and rolling.
What can you suggest for the listeners other than go out, get some seeds, grow some food, form community, look for the solutions within yourself? What else can you add to that? Because a lot of us are going to be staying here in Portland. We're not. A lot of us in the mindset that we're going to leave our city. There comes a certain pride with wanting to stay where you are and defend your land and your territory and your neighborhoods, communities, families, friends, etc. So for those of us that are just going to
the defense and everything you're talking about, they're new rules right now for registration of guns, as you're well aware. But you're going to just have to get together with other people of like minds. When it comes back to who and what we are, we're nothing more than a spirit inside this, what I call Rhetorec, this body, that is being polluted by everything that you eat, the vaccinations, all the stuff that we have to dumb down the people, even including all the microwaves and ELF and everything else that they're doing for mind control. We've become a nation of zombies that are basically under control of a few people.
Now, China has possession of some serious hardcore electromagnetic weaponry technology. And there's a very real possibility then, you might say, of this being used against the American people in a World War III scenario where our own defense infrastructure goes through a breakdown?
That's exactly correct. They can do it. You remember, I have the Chinese military. I have the information of what they have. They said, look, seriously, they said it's 5,000 years. It's our turn to run the world. So they're totally getting prepared for this, and you have to understand they got the population. They have over 100 million men for an army, and it's kind of like the George Washington prophecies, like they can run, come across from the north, coming down through Alaska and on down, and that's what they're looking at. They want the area from the southern part of Canada, the upper Midwest of the United States, and to the west, because we have the land and we have the water in order to grow food for their people. And you and I are at their point, we're nothing more than expendable containers or useless eaters.
Another guest that I had on the past, Leon Legant, a self-proclaimed clairvoyant and psychic, laid out how he viewed the invasion of the United States on the part of China and Russia. He had mentioned that he saw the Chinese bringing the microchips to the American people. What are your thoughts on that? I haven't found any information to back that up in terms of the news, but there definitely is a lot of concern about the implantable microchip and when that could be implemented or if it ever will be implemented.
Well, I happen to have the World Cash Card, or a copy of it anyway. But they're planning on at this minute, because a lot of the problem with the chip is there's going to be so many dead people in the street that you'll be able to go out and take somebody else's chip to get your identification. What they're going to want the people, and they're already training our postal employees for that, is you're going to have to register at the post office under the FEMA rules, and at that time you're going to cross-check and make sure you have the proper ID. That's with all your medical records, all the updating things that they're doing. And at the same time, if you're a good guy, you'll get your ration card. That's basically what that is. And it's similar to what we're talking about in the chip. And even though they could chip you, if everybody's dead, you can take somebody else's chip. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They've already looked at all of that.
Do you think the Chinese are doing what they're doing for China, or do you think that it's another banker front? Looking at the history of Mao Zedong and how he was supported by many financial Western factions to create a manufacturing base, I find it odd that we have been so intertwined with China for so many years, given the military technology and also jeopardizing our own national sovereignty and security in a very, what appears to be careless manner. But could it be careless, George, or could it be by design? It seems very odd that we would build up a country or help in its assistance only to get taken over by it economically and militarily. Kind of not making a lot of sense there when I look at the news and how they neglect to mention how Intel has sent them a supercomputer, or how the United States, our military, has sent them sound weapons. So what is your take on that odd relationship, the odd bedfellows, if you will?
Well, first of all, in the United States, we demand to get whatever products we can at the lowest price. And, of course, the Chinese had an unbelievable amount of people that were willing to work cheap, so we've been doing that. Meanwhile, our largest company in the United States has more trucks than anybody else, and we buy more things, and that's Walmart, and that's down in Arkansas, as you know, their main headquarters. Mm-hmm. What people don't know is that if you go down to the building, this huge office building with all the computers that keep track of all the stuff that we have so they can order from China, there are 2 floors totally underneath the ground, and that's the backup from our military in the United States. So they're keeping track of everything that we do, and the chips in all of the products that they have coming in from China, so they can come and drive by and be able to see what you bought, where you did it, and your dollar will have a chip in and everything else. That's the reason why I'm telling you, if you want to get a minor item. Is all you have to do is get a can of lead paint and paint it in a room, and they won't be able to see inside to find out what you bought.
And the other thing, we got all these computers we're using that were made in China. Now it's been announced they can easily hack our computers, hack the Pentagon, and if they can hack the Pentagon, they can hack your computer, ladies and gentlemen. If you're watching this show on the internet, or now the future, by the way, of the TV is the TV and the computer merging together, and that's another topic. But
it's all going to be one thing. You're going to put your TV on the wall, and that will be your television set, and it will be all set into one little device, and it's just sitting there controlled, and it's watching you as you watch it.
Implantable microchips. I hope we don't get to that point on the topic of that. Okay, look, with the last 5 minutes we have with you, George, tell us about the spiritual component that you also talk about, this handbook for the new paradigm.
Well, the handbook, and people can download it for free on our website. Just go to it and read it all. It's 195 pages. I got involved with extraterrestrials who gave me a totally different understanding of the planet, and I agreed to publish their material. And the handbook is the first in the series. There's 3 books. When you read the books a couple of times, you're basically giving them permission to assist, because we need all the help we can get right now. The ETs aren't coming down to save us at all, but they can give us information so we can save ourselves in the days ahead, if you're looking at it. And also a way to create something new out of whatever's going to be left, out of the chaos. And that's how the universe works. We will create a new paradigm, and that's the name of the book, Handbook for the New Paradigm, or the New Beginning. Because all of the cycles are coming to fruition, if you want to look at it, or a culmination about the year 2012, what follows in on all the prophecies. Well, we can all be studying this, and this is coming from every place, the clairvoyants, the psychics, ancient writings, Nostradamus, everything we have is called coming to this point, but we don't have a plan in order to get out, and that's what the handbook is for. And I'm urging your listeners to go ahead and just go to my website, nohoax.com, and go ahead and just read the material or download it if you want to. If you need hard copy, we have them available on our website, and that's the easiest way I can tell you, Alex, and I really appreciate you allowing me to give time for your audience tonight. My background, of course, I was running around with the guys that are planning on taking over the world, so I know exactly what they're going to be doing. And it's all ultimately coming down to reducing the population of the planet down to less than 500 million.
There's some sort of a wake-up that's taking place, I have to admit, although it's not happening as quick as I'd like to see, but there are a lot more people asking major questions, not just about what's going on in this political arena over here, this staged professional wrestling show that we're watching. We're throwing each other back and forth and doing body slams, but there's also the component of, what's going on with the nature of reality, our environment. We're learning about now solar flare threats, the magnetic field weakening. I find this to be real interesting. I wrote an article about it recently. It's on my website, went viral around the web, and now other people are writing about this as well. And I was just grabbing info from some other scientists that put their stuff out there. And now all these people, all of us, are looking at this peak of solar flares between 2010 and 2012, and the possibility that this could provide the knockout punch to the electric grid, the central banking system, this digital realm. They're saying it's an actual possibility. Now the government's they're really freaked out about this. They don't know what to do. Do you think it's possible they've known about this potential major Earth change in the solar system, really, for a long time, and they're just now telling us?
Oh, of course they have. When I'm back at the World Watch Institute in Washington, which is about 6 blocks north of the White House, I sit in there. They're all funded by all the think tanks. They're keeping track on everything, including what you're talking about. And they're following all these the information. They've known this stuff for a couple hundred years, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. Back in 1904, Colonel Younghusband, when he went to India, got all the documents from Atlantis and Lemuria. And that was forwarded to London. And in there, it showed that the planet was engineered for 500 million people, was going to flip on its axis about the year 2000. So they put together a program to try to flip it prematurely. I don't know if you're aware of that, but they exploded a nuclear bomb in 1908 in Tunguska, Siberia, hoping to flip the planet on its axis prematurely because 90% of the world lives next to the ocean. Well, the sources I'm getting from extraterrestrials as well as our scientists, we're going to have to be above 1,100 feet, Alex, just to give you an idea.
George, we're out of time, but maybe we can have you on again if you're open to it in the next couple months, and get your take on this whole extraterrestrial thing that you're referring to, the background, the good guys, the bad guys, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the whole 9 yards from your perspective.
I'll be glad to share all that information with you, Alex, in a couple of months.
Okay, let's go ahead
from there.
We'll go ahead and book that in a couple months. Thank you, George, and we'll talk to you again. And good luck with your endeavors and your travels. Travel safe, sir. All right, we're going to take maybe about 3 phone calls if they're brief. We're only going to be able to take brief phone calls tonight, but we are going to go ahead and open up the phone lines. Now, Christy, let's go ahead and start rolling some G20 footage and show some people some more imagery of what's going down, and we'll kind of try to cover as much as we can, show you the police attacking people with their shields. You see this one cop just, just bam, right in the girl's face, while the guy's going, come on, baby, bring it on. In that one track I showed you, they don't even touch him. He walks up, he kicks one of them, no, they don't want nothing to do with that. Yeah, I'm sure he's real intimidating with that blood coming down. Not that I want anyone to get hurt. I want no one to get hurt. But, can you imagine if people were to channel that passion into trying to wake people up every day of their lives? Instead of just following these kids with black masks. And if you walk up and try to ask them if they even know what the New World Order is, they don't. Or what 9/11 was all about, they don't. But you know what? They know that it's time to break some windows. Well, who are these people? Who were those kids in 1999 that were living in a building run by the city? And the police did not evict them. They let them stay there. They crapped and pissed all over the place. And a couple days later, they came out and started creating more damage and smashing windows. So we see a repeat of that pattern here. But for the most part, it was an entirely peaceful protest. But you see what the media is doing. They're trying to keep the focus on, the justification for why the police moved in. And it's interesting because you're seeing the press. Here's the press right here. We're going to go back to the audio, the video in a minute. But they're caught in the middle of all this, and they're going, well, it seems peaceful, but there are the cops over there, and they're just marching toward us. Let's listen to this guy.
But now the protest has reached its destination, the Bank of England.
And listen to the guy. He's like, so where's the violence? He's like, things are peaceful so far. All right, we're just waiting.
Those whose job it was to police it reflected that.
So everybody marched, and now they are at the Bank of England, the Royal Bank of Scotland.
The atmosphere changed dramatically. The demonstrators discovered police had blocked all routes out of the city. Soon, there was confrontation. In the melee, there were injuries on both sides. On the top of the picture here,
now don't tell me they weren't there to arrest people. They arrested 90 people, but not that guy.
Over the head with it.
And that guy was on a number of networks live. They were all locked and loaded. On Fox, they were all locked and loaded on that guy, almost as if they were sending you a signal. This is the guy that represents the...
clearly singled out the Royal Bank of Scotland
and then we have this
Street as a target.
So you might have a point man that's there
now in riot gear
to light the match.
The protest,
and then they got the others that go, oh yeah,
At this stage,
goddamn those banks! Give me this brick here!
Just a few yards away now, just around the corner. The other side of the Royal Bank of Scotland building, windows are being smashed, and these officers at this moment are not able to do anything about it.
It spills out of control, and the police have the pretext, and they go to
in
town.
In fact, it was left to one of the peaceful protesters
striking left and right
to stop the attack.
Well, these guys get to have about 100 cameras around them. It's easy for the media to get there, but not a single cop can get there. And it just goes on. Look at the old man there. He's saying, knock it off, you stupid punks. We know who you are. You're working for them. What the f...
Put out by police who are now occupying the building. The skirmishes continued through a long afternoon. Paul Davis, ITV News in the city.
Oh, America, America, where the hell did you go? All right, we got a couple phone calls here. Hello, how are you? What's going on in your world?
Hi, Alex. It's Ken. Calm down, take a big deep breath. Love you for what you're doing. You're doing so well. We did a little field trip yesterday, and we went around to all the gun shops, and all the sporting goods stores like Sportsman's Warehouse, G.I. Joe's, even the little schmo gun shops. There is no ammunition in this town. There's none available for sale. It's all been bought. A Hillsboro gun shop had a crate of ammunition come in, and a father and two sons paid $31,000 and bought it all. There's nothing. There's no reloading
thought that was
equipment.
illegal.
There's no power. No, as long as it's a legal product, you can buy 1 box or 100,000 boxes. It doesn't matter. But the point is, it's all evaporated. In other words, even the reloading dies, even the odd calibers, like, obsolete calibers, 6.5 millimeter
Right.
by, Schmo's Swiss, they're all gone. There's no bullets and ammunition on the shelves. The American people have bought them all and have taken them home. I wish you would have asked George his take on the massive run. There are no pump shotguns out there. There are no AR type rifles, lever action 30-30s. Everything has been sold in the last few weeks in this state.
I've also heard that much of this ammunition is foreign made, but I want to add to what I said earlier. I've gotten a lot of emails and reports about legislation they've already passed or is in the process of being passed that would criminalize people stockpiling large amounts of ammunition. I remember hearing
I've heard about that too. It's
Okay.
supposedly supposed to come around June 10th. Listen, you got
Gotcha.
other callers. I love you. Come
Thank
up
you.
and see us in Northwest soon. Bye.
All right, next caller, go ahead. How you doing?
Oh, good. Yeah, hey, did you guys hear anything about the story about a month ago regarding the people that had XM satellite radio when they got into the Portland area? They were driving above 35 miles an hour. Their XM satellite radio went out, and I think at least Channel 6 and maybe Channel 2 or 8, I can't remember, but there was at least one, if not two, news channels did a story on this and how the people were complaining and stuff. But I heard a part of a news story on KBOO one evening just about at the same time about how now this is just a theory or a possibility, about how the combination of the digital TV signal along with this new clear wireless internet that they have are combining and creating some bad, similar to ionizing type of radiation. And I'm just thinking that could be maybe knocking out the XM satellite radio because they use repeaters down here on the ground, so people can use these little Walkman type of devices and walk around with one on their belt loop or something or in their shirt pocket and listen to XM. So that's just something I thought I'd pass along to you there in case you didn't know about that. And the check with KBOO Radio, and I think it was called ecotrust.org or something like that. But I may be wrong on that internet or on that web address because I don't have a computer, so I didn't bother to look it up. But call the person that does the 5 o'clock news at KBOO Radio, and they'll have more information on it. I don't listen to the news every night, so I haven't found out if there's anything new on that. But they were talking about that the combination of the digital TV signal and the this new clear wireless internet is acting like ionizing radiation.
Interesting.
So what George
Interesting
was talking
stuff.
about there about all the EMF pollution.
Well, thank you for that tip. Thank you for your call as well. Hopefully that was some information that some other listeners might be able to use. I had not heard about that, but there certainly is a lot of technology that is here in Portland, Oregon. Okay, now I'm going to go over, in terms of technology, a couple brief reports, and thank you for the callers. We're going to go to one more in just a moment. Let's go over briefly these stories that I've also set aside for the end. All right, let's look at technology. Big Brother wants to smell your fear. Law enforcement agencies are seeking scientists to develop an artificial nose that can detect the smell of fear as terrorists pass through security at airports. So it's not just scanning your naked body or scanning your EEG. It's being turned into a hell on earth, the modern-day airports. And I don't believe that's an overstatement. You need to look real closely. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security is advertising for specialists to devise airport scanners that will sniff out deceptive individuals. Homeland Security wants a device that can automatically compare odors with scents collected from crime scenes and held in a smell bank, which, like DNA or fingerprints, could be used in court. Scientists say the fake nose could theoretically detect the smells of certain diseases or disorders like cancer or depression. Here's another one. Village mob thwarts Google Street View car. You know, Google Street View. They drive all around the country taking pictures of everything. And I know one guy's got a 9/11 was an inside job sticker on his van. He watches this show. And they went here in his neighborhood in Portland and, he found himself on the internet. There's my car. The weird thing was, I actually ought to show you this image because he sent it to me. He proved this was blurred out. They took the time to blur out the 9/11 was an inside job bumper sticker on a car. Anyway, that's Portland. But in the UK, basically a guy that was driving around filming got jumped by a bunch of villagers. They were totally pissed off. They blocked one of the cars, complaining it was an invasion of their privacy and that the photographs were contributing to more burglaries in the neighborhood, which apparently is a little bit well to do. So they're like, why are you just showing people what our homes look like? We're already having to deal with more break-ins. We think there's a connection. All right, last report real briefly. Tent cities popping up around the world. In Sacramento, they're being kicked out by Schwarzenegger, who wants to put them in a camp, which is the fairgrounds. And so people are giving Nazi-like wristbands for those that they say have the right to stay there and those that came later. There's like 400 people there. They're only going to take 125, so they're going for the people that were there first, and they're going to try to force them off the land. Thanks for getting that graphic up, guys. Great job. And they're going to try to push them into this camp. And also Eric Stein had a program, a plan to do something like that around 3rd and Everett in downtown Portland, but the plan didn't fly. People are like, I don't want to be in this crack house looking thing near the Dirty Duck on the west side of the Broadway Bridge. Screw that. All right, guys, we're out of time. 30 seconds to the next caller. Sorry you had to wait. Go ahead.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello, is it Alex Ansary?
Hello, yes, you're on the air. We have about 30 seconds.
Okay, well, I see. I'm actually here to criticize you. You know, that's how people learn from criticism. Well,
you got 20 seconds.
I believe in the process of evolution. There's a scientific explanation to everything that is going on right now. Like organisms, they battle in order to come unify sometime later in the future. Now, you always criticize NAFTA and the North American Trade Union or whatever it is.
Yeah, centralization of power. Yeah,
okay,
definitely a critic of that.
It takes conflict for human beings to unite.
True.
That's going to be the evolution process that humans are going to take in the future.
It doesn't mean the New World Order is good.
Yes, what's wrong with the world order? When human beings come together, it takes conflicts just like organisms fight in order to.
And now we are out of time. Thank you for your call. But we need to build a new world without a corporatized New World Order where they make the rules and laws. Here's a little bit of advice. Look at the system needs us. We don't need the system. And that's a reality they don't want you hearing on the mainstream TV. Guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Well, we'll use this.
I'm Alex Ansary. Reminding you, the path to the ultimate truth still starts within. Down with the North American Union, down with the New World Order. Humanity shall prevail. Good night.